It was one of the most powerful piston engines ever built, a technological marvel that promised to give America's bombers the speed, range, and power they needed to dominate the skies of World War II. But behind the gleaming aluminum and roaring exhausts of the Wright R3350 Duplex Cyclone lay a dark truth, an engineering nightmare so dangerous that it almost destroyed the very aircraft it was meant to empower. This is the story of the engine that nearly cost America its air superiority, and the truth the aviation world tried to bury. Number 1. Born in a time of war. The year was 1937. Tensions were rising across the world, and the U.S. Army Air Corps was already planning for a war most Americans still thought would never come. Engineers at the Wright Aeronautical Corporation were tasked with creating an engine powerful enough to lift the next generation of long-range bombers, machines that could carry heavy payloads across oceans. Their solution was ambitious. A massive 18-cylinder, twin-row radial engine with 3,350 cubic inches of displacement. On paper, it could produce an incredible 2,200 horsepower. They called it the R3350 Duplex Cyclone. It was a monster 55 inches in diameter, weighing over a ton, and producing more heat than any engine before it. The challenge wasn't building it. The challenge was keeping it from destroying itself. Number 2. The fire within. The R3350 was rushed into production. The war in Europe was accelerating, and the U.S. needed bombers like the B-29 Superfortress ready for deployment. Boeing's engineers built the B-29 around the R3350, convinced it would deliver unmatched range and power. But the first tests revealed a terrifying flaw. The engines overheated constantly. The rear row of cylinders, buried deep inside the engine's complex cooling fins, got so hot that oil cooked into sludge, bearings melted, pistons seized. Onto your engines caught fire mid-flight. One test pilot said the R3350 was less of an engine and more of a controlled explosion. Engineers scrambled to fix the problem. They modified the cowlings, improved airflow, and experimented with new fuel mixtures. Nothing worked. Every fix introduced new problems: oil leaks, vapor lock, and unpredictable detonation. The U.S. Army called the situation critical. But there was no time to stop. The war couldn't wait for perfection. Number 3. Into combat, the Flying Inferno. By 1944, B-29 bombers powered by the power R3350 were flying missions over Japan. They were the most advanced bombers ever built. Pressurized cabins, remote-controlled gun turrets, and a range of over 3,000 miles. But for every flight that reached its target, another ended in smoke. Pilots began calling the B-29 the flying gas tank. On hot Pacific airfields, the massive radial engines ran so hot that mechanics often worked shirtless, dousing engines with water before takeoff. Many aircraft never made it off the runway. Engines caught fire during taxi, magnesium ignited, and flames spread through the fuel system. Dozens of crews burned alive before even leaving the ground. In one infamous case, Major General Kenneth Wolfe, commander of the 1st B-29 Wing, reported that more aircraft were lost to engine fires than to enemy fighters. But the government stayed silent. The military couldn't admit that America's most advanced bomber had a fatal flaw. The R3505 problem was officially classified. Mechanics were ordered to keep working, pilots to keep flying. Number 4. A change born of tragedy. When the war ended, more than 400 B-29s had been lost in accidents, many caused by engine fires. Wright Aeronautical knew it couldn't ignore the issue any longer. Post-war, the company began redesigning the R3350 from the inside out. The biggest breakthrough came with direct fuel injection and improved cooling fins that finally stabilized the temperatures. The new models produced up to 3,700 horsepower, making them some of the most powerful piston engines ever built. These improved R3350s powered legendary post-war aircraft like the Lockheed Constellation, Douglas DC-7, and Super Constellation, glamorous airliners that carried passengers across oceans. To the public, the R3350 was reborn as a success story, a triumph of American engineering, but those who worked on it knew better. One engineer later admitted, "We didn't solve the R3350, we learned to live with it." Number 5. The Cursed Legacy. Even in its refined form, the Wright R3350 carried a difficult legacy. Its immense power came at the cost of complexity. More than 3,000 moving parts working in delicate coordination. Every cylinder had to perform flawlessly, as even minor component issues could disrupt performance. As airlines demanded faster, longer routes through the 1950s, the limits of piston technology became clear. The limits of Ashley Pops of de longer. The limits 19s to longer one. 3350 operated at extremely high temperatures, and maintenance crews often faced challenges with overheating and oil system reliability, particularly during extended overwater flights. By the mid-1950s, attention in the aviation world had shifted dramatically. The advent of reliable jet aircraft such as the Daiichi Avalon Comet and Boeing 707 marked the beginning of a new era. Older piston-powered fleets, including the Lockheed Constellation and Douglas DC-7, continued to operate but faced increasing scrutiny due to their demanding engine systems. Several serious incidents in this period highlighted both the strengths and the limits of high-output piston engines. While investigations ultimately cleared the R3350 of direct fault, its reputation remained controversial among pilots and engineers. Many respected its unmatched performance, yet quietly acknowledged that it was an engine that demanded absolute precision and sometimes unforgiving discipline. Number 6. From the skies to the graveyard. By the early 1960s, jet engines had replaced the R3350 on nearly all commercial routes. The last of the piston-driven giants were retired to cargo service or scrapped in desert boneyards. But the Duplex Cyclone wasn't gone. Its final chapter played out in Southeast Asia. During the Vietnam War, the U.S. Air Force used modified B-29s called A-1 Skyraiders and AC-119 gunships, both powered by updated versions of the BC R3350. They were reliable in combat, as long as mechanics treated them like ticking bombs. Crews joked that the engine didn't run, it survived. But even then, the R3350 had one last lesson to teach. Pilots learned to fly engine out, because losing one to fire mid-mission was still common. Maintenance manuals were rewritten to include emergency cooling procedures and oil flushes after every flight. The Duplex Cyclone had evolved, but it never truly tamed its fiery nature. Number 7. The shocking truth. When historians look back, the Wright R3350 stands as both a symbol of brilliance and failure. It represented everything about wartime: innovation, speed, power, ambition, but also everything about its cost, risk, secrecy, and sacrifice. The shocking truth is that the R3350 wasn't ready for war. It was rushed into combat, its flaws hidden under layers of bureaucracy and patriotic optimism. The US government knew the engines were unstable, but chose silence to maintain morale and production. Hundreds of airmen paid the price. Their planes didn't fall to enemy gunfire. They were consumed by the very power meant to protect them. And yet, without the R3350, the B-29 might never have flown. Without the B-29, the war in the Pacific might have dragged on. Without its failures, aviation might never have learned how to build safer, cooler, more efficient engines. The Duplex Cyclone was both a hero and a villain, a roaring contradiction that pushed technology to its limits and beyond. Number 8. Legacy of Fire. Today, only a handful of R3350s are still running, carefully restored by vintage aircraft enthusiasts and museum engineers. When they start one up, the air fills with the deep, thunderous growl of 18 pistons fighting against physics. To the untrained ear, it's the sound of raw power. But to those who know its story, it's the echo of sacrifice and the cost of progress. Standing near an ant's eye. It's standing! 3350 as it roars to life is like listening to history itself, a reminder of how thin the line is between innovation and catastrophe. The R3350 didn't just power airplanes, it powered an era. An era built on speed, ambition, and the relentless human desire to go further, even when it meant flying too close to the flames. To the Wright R3350 Duplex Cyclone wasn't just an engine, it was a gamble. A mechanical beast born from desperation during World War VIII, designed to power America's heaviest bombers across oceans and continents. It produced an astonishing 2,200 to 3,700 horsepower, depending on the beast's version. Numbers that seemed almost unreal in the early 1940s. But behind those numbers was a haunting truth. The R3350 could deliver unmatched power, but at the constant risk of self-destruction. Developed by the Wright Aeronautical Corporation, The R3350 was a twin-row, 18-cylinder radial engine, air-cooled, and monstrously complex. It was built to give the Boeing B-29 Superfortress, the world's first high-altitude, long-range strategic bomber, the muscle it needed to strike deep into Japan. On paper, it was the perfect match, powerful, efficient, and revolutionary. In the skies over the Pacific, however, the story was far more terrifying. The engine's design had a fatal flaw: it ran too hot. The tightly packed cylinders, combined with limited airflow and inadequate cooling fins, led to extreme heat buildup. Mechanics called it the cookpot. Fuel lines and oil seals would melt or crack, turning minor leaks into instant infernos. The rear cylinders, starved of airflow, were notorious for detonating or seizing. Fires broke out so often that crews flying the B-29 nicknamed it the Flying Lighter. Many aircraft were lost not to enemy fire, but to their own engines. Ground crews feared the R3350 almost as much as pilots did. The Wright R3350 Duplex Cyclone was the engine that could lift mountains, but it also burned through them. A symbol of the danger hidden behind every breakthrough, and a reminder that in aviation, power always comes with a price.